guys, it's Ashley, and today it's time for a wrap-up. It is the end of August, almost. Tomorrow is the last day, and so I decided I would do my July and August wrap-up and try to get back into this whole schedule thing. I've got 13 books to share with you today, which is pretty darn good for a 2-month stint. Most of these are thanks to Booktubeathon, so let's get into it. The first book I've got for you is The Girl Who Ran. This is by, who is this by? Frances Poletti and Christina Yee. It is about Bobby Gibb, who is the first woman to ever run the Boston Marathon, which, being from New England, being from Massachusetts, it was like a personal thing. I met Bobby at BookCon and she signed my book for me. And this book was really cool. It just tells her story in a obviously child-friendly manner. It's just about the girl who loves to run and how she just kept running and what running felt like to her. One of the phrases that's used a lot in here is like the wind in the fire, which I think is really cool. And so you got this beautiful artwork that's done by Susanna Chapman. And it's just a beautiful book and I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously it's a children's book, so it flew by. Definitely if you have interest in running or in the Boston Marathon or Boston local history, this is a really, really nice book, especially if you have kids who like to run. Next, I'm going to show 3 books at once because they're all finishing up the series. And so I read Opal and Origin and Opposition, all by Jennifer L. Armentrout. These are the last 3 books in the Lux series, so I have finally completed the Lux series. I loved it. I don't think any of the books got fewer than 4 stars for me because I just love the story so much, and I'm not going to go into what they are because spoilers, these are the 3rd, 4th, and 5th books, but I definitely enjoy the series. Totally like a guilty pleasure read, like Twilight was, and still is, but that same kind of feel. Just, I really enjoyed it, except I like this story more than Twilight. I still have a spot in my heart for Twilight. However, I think the story and the characters are better in these books. Because I'm so obsessed with the series, I did order the spin-off books, which are Oblivion and Obsession, and so I've got those now on my shelf, and we will get to those eventually. And next we start getting into the books that I read during Booktubeathon. So the first one is The End We Start From by Megan Hunter. This is a teeny tiny book, and it's composed of these little simple paragraphs, prose, I don't know what you want to call it, couplets, but it's a story about the end of the world. There's massive flooding. Currently, with everything going on in Texas and Houston and all that flooding, I'm sort of being reminded of this book. Basically, there's giant flooding in London and England, and so people are forced out of their homes to go find refuge at other places. So this woman is kind of chronicling what's happening as she's going through it. So it's kind of like a diary, but not like most diaries or novels are. It's told in very small spurts of her life. So you don't get the entire picture, you just get little teeny tiny bits. At the time that they leave, she's pregnant, and so you really have this feel that she's a new mom and doesn't have much time to write what she wants to, so she's kind of just writing little bits here and there. I don't know how I felt about it. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. It definitely is one that makes me think, but it's got this weird storytelling thing that isn't quite my thing, but it's really tiny. If you come across it, I would say check it out. And if prose and that sort of thing is your thing, then definitely check it out. Next up, I have The Magic Misfits by Neil Patrick Harris. This is a middle grade novel. I would say younger middle grade. Think like early Harry Potter days. It's a really cute story. It's very reminiscent of, there's a spider on my ceiling. Anyways, it's very reminiscent to me of A Series of Unfortunate Events, whether that's his inspiration or not. It has kind of those elements, and so I really liked this one. This is about a boy named Carter who runs away from his uncle who is really mean and stumbles into this world where magic might be real and there's more to what's going on than meets the eye, and he meets these friends who are also fans of magic, like actual sleight of hand magic, and they have this wonderful adventure, and it's just really fun. I really enjoyed reading this series. This book comes out in September, so definitely check it out. It is the first in a series, which I am excited for because I think it will be a fun series. So if you have kids, this is definitely a fun series, or if you just like middle grade, it's still a fun series. Next up, I have another Jennifer L. Armentrout book. This one is If There's No Tomorrow, and this one, is this out yet? It's coming out very soon, that much I know. September 5th, so probably just after or by the time I get this video up, this will be on sale. It's so good. It's a contemporary story. It follows this girl, Lena, who has something something happened. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but something happens that alters her life, and it really makes her think about what she wants out of life and the meaning of life and her purpose in life and all of these different kinds of things. I'm purposely being pretty vague because I don't want to give away the main plot point, but I really liked this story. It is very emotional. It's not a light book, let's put it that way. However, I couldn't stop reading it. I read it very quickly. I was in the middle of a readathon, but I still would have read it really quickly because it draws you in. It does start off just a little bit slow, but nothing like, oh, get to the good stuff. It starts off one way and then things happen. So definitely check this out if you're a fan of Jennifer L. Armentrout, if you're looking for a new contemporary with a little more edge and darkness than most contemporaries, get this. You'll like it. You will. Probably. If you don't blame me. I said probably. Next up, I have Of Mess and Moxie by Jen Hatmaker. This is a nonfiction. It came out last month. It came out August 8th. So you can get your hands on this right now. I love Jen Hatmaker's books. She writes like she's just your friend or your pal or your aunt or whoever. It's really just a bunch of small chapters about just enjoying life and wrangling delight out of this wild and glorious life. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite book. I didn't come out of it with like one great epiphany or anything like that, but I definitely enjoyed it. There were different parts that I took to heart and things that made me think and things that made me laugh. All sorts of different emotions throughout this book. So if you're a fan of Jen Hatmaker, if you like Christian life nonfiction, check it out. Give it a shot because I like it. And isn't that why you read books? Because I like it? Yeah, I knew it. Next we have Genuine Fraud by E. Lockhart. I loved this book. This was my favorite book of Booktubeathon. It comes out soon, like within the next week or so. I'm not gonna say a whole lot about this, but it's fantastic. If you liked We Were Liars, you'll like this. If you didn't like We Were Liars, you might still like this. It's got that twisty kind of thing that she does. It's hard to understand what's happening. I spent most of this book wondering what was going on, but in like a really good way. I can't tell you much. Just the back doesn't tell you much. I think I read this in my TBR for Booktubeathon, but I'm gonna read it again because it doesn't tell you much, but it's enough to make you want to read. At least it did for me. An intense friendship, a disappearance, a murder, or maybe two, a bad romance, or maybe three, blunt objects, disguises, blood, and chocolate. The American dream. Superheroes, spies, and villains. A girl who refuses to give people what they want from her. A girl who refuses to be the person that she once was. I really enjoyed this book. Now that like I know what happened, I'm gonna have to read it again and like pay attention to certain things, but I really, really enjoyed it a lot. The last book I read for Booktubeathon was I'm Just No Good at Rhyming by Chris Harris. This is kind of like Shel Silverstein, children's poetry. It's fun. There's pretty pictures, there's monsters, and there's just different poems. I made my sister crack up laughing and my mom come look to see what was wrong because there's this one, I'm gonna read you just a little bit because I don't have time to read the whole thing. The title is, If You Ever Have to Memorize a Poem of 20 Lines or Longer and Deliver It to Your Class, then this is a pretty good choice. And I'm just gonna do 5 lines because it repeats each line like 4 times, so I'm just gonna pick out a couple, okay? Ready? Avocado, 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 avocado. And that's basically it for 20 lines, and it cracked me up and it cracked my sister up, and because my mom was upstairs and didn't hear exactly what was happening during the whispering and the shouting part, she came thinking something was wrong, and it was pretty hilarious. But I really enjoyed this. I love Shel Silverstein books, and so I loved this just as much. Definitely check this out. Then I just needed a reread. I didn't know what I needed, but I needed something Lori Wick. And so I stood at my shelf for probably a good 5 minutes trying to decide which Lori Wick I wanted to read. And I finally settled on Every Storm because I hadn't read this one in like a few years, I think. So I reread it and I loved it. It's so cute. This is a book about a girl named Lori. It's set in just after the war in 1945 or so. And she and her sister have been working in Australia as teachers, and they get a chance to go home to visit, and on their way home their plane crashes. Unfortunately, everybody except for Lori dies in this plane crash, and she's stranded there for weeks on end until some sailors come along because their boat needs repairs. She gets rescued by this handsome soldier named Reg, and we go on and just kind of see her adapt not only to losing her sister, but to being back home without her, and romance blossoms at some point. And I love Lori Wick's books, and so reading this is like being with an old friend, or like a comfy pair of pajamas that has holes and is super soft and you don't let anybody see you in public, and that's what these books are for me. Coming up to the last two books. This one is just a teeny tiny book. This is Nothing O'Clock by Neil Gaiman. This is a Doctor Who book. It's the 11th Doctor, in case you can't tell. This cute little thing came from this 12-pack of books that I got last year at the Doctor Who experience. I'm finally getting around to reading them. I chose this one to be my book for Boston Comic-Con when I went, because I was meeting Matt Smith, and so I just figured like it'd be a good book to read while I'm waiting in lines to meet people, and I loved it. It was really cute. I could see it playing out in my head as an actual episode. It was wonderful. Really good. Basically, there's this monster that's taking over all of time, turning everybody into itself. I don't know how else to explain it, but it was good, and it was Neil Gaiman-y, and it was Doctor Who-y, and everything I need. This final book I haven't technically finished, but again, tomorrow is the last day of August, so I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to finish it. I've got about 50 pages left. I can read it today, and I can read it tomorrow while I'm at the airport waiting for my flight. I'm confident I'm gonna finish it. This is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This is like a classic of personal finance books, and I'm finally getting around to it. I got to meet him at BookCon. He signed this book for me and we chatted a little bit, and he actually gave me another book, which is the book I'm most excited to read for reasons I'll get into when I read that one. But I started reading that one, and one of the first things it says is, if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, go back and read that, because you need to understand those principles before you go on to this one. So finishing this one, I'm really enjoying it. It's making me think quite a lot. Its principles are a lot different than most personal finance principles, which is why I'm thinking a lot and kind of like, oh, so is everything I'm setting up not what I should be doing, or is it? And kind of working through what I actually want from my financial plan. So definitely liking this book. Like I said, I've got about 50 pages left. It's really good. So I would definitely recommend it, even though I'm not done with it. I think there's a lot of things you can learn from it. Even if you decide not to fully pursue the kind of things it's talking about, I think there's still something you can glean from it. So those are my 13 books that I've read over the past 2 months. I had a pretty good time reading them. There wasn't any that I was like, oh, I don't like this book. The End We Start From was kind of close to that. Not that I didn't like it, I just didn't understand it. It's not my type of writing, it's not my type of book, so I didn't really connect with it very well. But it still was interesting, still kind of made me think a little bit, so I can't say I read a bad book this past 2 months. I also can't believe that this summer is over. So crazy. I'm going to wrap up because now it is almost 10 o'clock and I have to be on a plane tomorrow at 6 a.m. So I gotta start like getting to bed now. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know how your summer reading has been. As they say in Night Vale, we survived the summer reading program. Yay! Have a great day and I will talk to you later. Bye!